Hello, we're going to do a quick, well, I don't know about quick, but we're going to do a little more in-depth walkthrough guide here on installing your C++ compiler and your choice of IDE. This is going to be following through with a PowerPoint that was put together by one of the students in the course. So everyone should see this. If not, it's on your instructor page. We're going to kind of follow along with this. I'm going to take some of the links from here. I'll post the links in the description for this again. But this is going to be showing you specifically how to do this with Visual Studio Code. I'm going to start in Windows. I'll then timestamp when I get to an Ubuntu distribution if you'd like to see it for Linux, or if you'd like to look into using a WSL, which is a virtual machine. But for people who don't do that and are just going to be using Windows, which should be the majority of the students, the first 15-ish minutes or so will be covering that. So we're going to start with downloading MinGW, and we're kind of bouncing around with these a bit, but if you want to just follow through the PowerPoint in that order, it'll work just the same. So the first thing we're going to do is download MinGW. There's a link here in the PowerPoint. I'll have the link down for you. It's going to be for the minimalist GNU for Windows. Once you go to the link, it should automatically start downloading after a few seconds. If not, there's a download button there. It'll get you a .exe file. Go ahead and run that. It's going to open this installation tool for you. So once it happens, go ahead and click install. We're going to let this be, pick this installation directory for us. This is going to be on our C drive. If you have multiple drives, you can put it wherever you want. But I would leave this where it is. This is going to make it a lot easier. And then you can uncheck these bottom two for the start menu or on the desktop. Those two you don't need to have. Those are just putting links there for you to open the tool, which you shouldn't have to use after this again. So go ahead and click continue. Mine's just telling me I already have them, so I'm going to reinstall, but you shouldn't see that pop up. This little download manager is going to pull up here. Might take about a minute or two depending on your internet, but right after this is done, we'll come right back in. All right, so once this is finished, the little continue button will light up here for you. You can go ahead and click that. This is going to pull up a this GUI here that you can select which packages get installed for your for our compiler. Here, I'm going to show you what, don't mind what I'm doing right here. Since mine's already installed, it's showing me those are installed. So I'm going to apply these changes real quick and remove them and then show you a clean install. Okay. So yours is going to look like this. It's not going to have anything selected. We're going to select a few of these. So the first one we want to select here, let me move this across so you can see the full name. We want to select the MinGW Developer Toolkit. So to do this, you right-click on it and then mark it for installation. This one takes a few seconds because it's selecting a whole bunch of other packages in the background. If you're curious, under all packages, it lists every possible thing to install, but we're just going to stay on the basic setup screen. So we want to mark the Developer Toolkit. We want to mark the MinGW 32 base, mark that for installation. Go ahead, come down and mark the GCC-G++ for installation. And that should be it. The other ones are different languages that for compilation. We're not going to use Fortran, Ada, or Objective-C. So you skip over those for now. If you want to install them, go for it. But after you have these selected, come up to install, and you're going to hit apply changes, and then the apply button. Now this will take a little bit. This is now extracting the files onto your system. This is installing the compiler. And mine's quick because I have an SSD, but this might take a minute or so depending on your hard drive. But once it's done, you can hit close, and then we'll continue on with adding the path variable. And then just to verify we have it, go to our C drive. We have this MinGW folder, and you have these files here. We're going to come back to this in a second, so go ahead and leave this pulled up. But what you're going to do next is come down to your settings. You can go ahead and open your settings up. You can type in settings to find it. You can click down here and go to settings. Anything works. We're then going to search for your edit environmental variables for your account. Click on that. And what we're going to do is add the MinGW path to our path variable. Come down to here to path. Go ahead and click on edit. Then you're going to want to hit new. And you're going to want to paste in our MinGW path that we have. So the easiest way to do this is to go back to that C drive where your MinGW installation is. Go ahead and double click in there and then go to bin. And then come up to here. You can do this by clicking in this white search bar to the right of these little like shortcut links and copying this path right here. It's pretty straightforward if you want to type it in as well. If you did the normal installation, it's just going to be this. It's your C colon / MinGW / bin. This just is where the files are. So like here's our C, G++ and GCC executables. So we're just telling it where to look. But go on ahead and come back into your edit environmental variables, make a new one, and you're going to paste it in here. So I already have mine, so I don't need to have it there. But after it's in, you're going to hit OK. It's in your path variables now. Let's hit OK again. Close this out. Okay. So you're going to open up your Visual Studio Code probably from your desktop, or just coming down into here. You can search for Visual Studio Code. Don't mind me, I have to open mine a little different. I won't get into reasons why, but has to do with some virtual machine stuff I do. Well, actually, if you get to the Linux part of this, you'll see why I have to open mine like that later. But don't worry about that if you're on Windows doing normal installation. Just open Studio Code. There's probably a desktop link. If not, find in your Start menu or by searching. It's going to look like this initially. The next thing we're going to do in Studio Code is install the extensions that we need, and then we're going to get it set up to run our C++ code. So let's start with extensions. To kind of run through this general layout here for you, your code's going to show up here. This left side, you have a couple of options of things to have pulled up. One here is your Explorer. This is what you're going to have up normally when you're coding. This will show you everything in the folder you're currently in. I am in my C drive right now, so that's why I see all of this stuff. The rest of these, don't worry about for now. If you ever want to use GitHub or learn about source controlling, you can do that with Visual Studio Code. It has some built-in debugging, which is very nice as well, but we're not going to use those yet. First thing you're going to do, come down to the extensions, which is this little 4 squares, with one of them out into the corner, and click on that. We're going to install a couple of different extensions. I already have them installed, but I'll show you what they look like. So type in C++, and there is a C-C++ extension here. It looks like this. It's purple. And go ahead, and there's going to be a little install button here for you. Here, I'm going to click on a different one to show you what it looks like. There'll be just a little install button. So click on that for the C and C++ one. This isn't the compiler, but this is this is just an extension to configure Visual Studio Code to work better with C++. So you don't have to do anything else. The other one you need to type in now is type in code runner, and it has .run is the little picture for it. Go ahead and install this one as well. This lets you run all of these different types of files. It's a pretty nice extension to have. We're only worried about C and C++ currently. So after those are installed, you can go ahead and exit out of this little extension page. See here, it gives us a couple of little commands. What we're going to do is we're going to come to File. We're going to open a folder. This is what I recommend to do, at least. You can open up files right away, but I think it's much better to open up the folders. If you don't have one, I would recommend having a folder where you save all of your labs for the semester. Make sure there's no spaces. I'd use underscores. No weird symbols except for like maybe dashes or underscores. Maybe even put numbers if you want. I'd probably have folders inside of here for each lab specifically, like having a lab 1, lab 2, maybe. That's completely up to you here. I think that'll make things easier. For now, I just have the CPP labs folder. So I'm inside the folder. I'm going to hit select folder. Oh, whoops, I accidentally, don't mind me there, because I clicked on that folder. It tried to open it. Okay. Now I'm in my folder. I have a test code in here called test.c++. Don't worry about that. Okay. Called test.c++. This is just going to print hello world. Let me run it. So as you see, it looks pretty, right? There's colors through here. The comments are in green. The include, using, return, which are some reserved words, are in purple for us. Puts our strings here in orange text. That was that C++ IntelliSystems extension did this for us. If not, it would look like this. Let me copy the code in and show you what it would look like if you don't have it. Oh, it's defaulting to C++. Let me... well, it just wouldn't have the colors if you didn't have that in there. So, okay, now we have this set up. We need to configure our code runner to work, basically, so we can have this little, when we hit this little run button up here, that it'll compile and run our C++ code. So, come down to the bottom left. There's this little button that says Manage, but it's basically our settings. Go ahead and come to Command Palette, and then type in C++. You're going to want to open up the Edit Configurations UI. Yours won't show up at the top. It'll be down here because it does it alphabetical. But since I recently opened this, it shows up at the top. So if you've opened it before, it might be up here. If not, it'll be alphabetical. Click on the UI one. The UI populates the JSON one. So I wouldn't mess with that one yet. Just use this. It's a little easier. So this pulls up a bunch of commands. This is what's configuring the run button to work for C++. You shouldn't have to change this. There should only be one option for you at the moment. If not, make sure you select Win32. Now you need to specify the compiler path. So click your drop down. You won't have all of these options, or you shouldn't. If you do, that's okay. But you're going to come in and do the MinGW bin gcc.exe. That's important. Don't click G++, do GCC. And then you're going to come to the IntelliSystem mode. Make sure you select GCC for x64. Then the rest of it you shouldn't have to touch. I would change this to the C11 for the C standard library here, and then make sure GNU++ 14 is selected for the C standard. Okay. And close out of that, and now we should be able just to hit the run button. Might take it a little bit at the first time, but this should be able to run our code and then show us our output here in the terminal. Give it in a second. Okay, there we go. So there it is. Printed hello world and gave us this new line there at the end. So it ran this many seconds. You'll see that it created this test.exe file. So that's the compiled C++ code. When you compile something, it puts it into an executable. This is actually a bunch of machine code that your processor can understand. But if you also look here, this tells us what our system just ran. So what it did, CD means change directory, if you're curious about this, which you should learn what this means. This is important, especially if you're learning how to program. Change directory means it's changing what folder you're currently in. So mine's selecting and going into my C++ labs folder, which if I come into here, let me show you again what that is. This is just my folder where the C++.cpp file, the one I just ran, is. And so it changes directory to here. Then this double ampersand means to do the other commands with it. So it says change directory to here. Then it ran g++ test.cpp-o test. So what this means is it's calling our g++ compiler. When we changed our path variable, we gave it permission that if so you type in g++ in a terminal, it goes to that MinGW inside of your bin executable. We then tell it to compile the test.cpp file, which again is in this folder. That's why we changed it to that directory. And then this -o lets us specify what the executable name will be. So if we didn't put this -o in test, which they aren't needed to run, it would have created a file called a.exe. If you ever do that and you see an a.exe, that's normally just means you didn't specify the name of it. So in this case, we did -o and we named it text. So there's test.exe. And then it has one more command here, the double ampersand again. And this time it calls this test file. You see this specifies where the file is. So inside of my documents, coding, CPP labs, and then it has a backslash and then test. These quotes here are needed to specify the name of it. But basically all this is doing is running this .exe file. So, and that's what it does. Hello world. So the last thing we're going to need to do is we need to configure Code Runner to accept inputs and outputs. Run with this a little bit. You've noticed that you can do couts perfectly fine, but when you were doing cins, the system kind of locked up a bit. So if it did that, go ahead and restart Studio Code, open it back up. And then there's just one little thing we have to do to get your code runner to work a little better. So come back down to the bottom left to the manage icon. We're going to hit settings this time, not command palette, settings. Pull up a search bar here. So I just go ahead and type in code dash runner. Open up a lot of commands here if you want to configure code runner further, but we're only going to do one of them. So these are alphabetical. We're going to scroll down to code runner. We're going to look for run in terminal. You're going to find this one and just check this box. So this makes it so that code runner is going to run code in the integrated terminal. Now you don't need to reset anything. That should work. Now once we come up and hit our run button, code now pops up in the terminal instead of this output window. So now we can input through this way. So now you don't have to, you can still do the code runner to do inputs. It won't lock up for you anymore. And that should wrap up the Windows part here. And then we'll move on to Linux now. So that's going to be the end of the Windows part. I'm going to go into a basic Linux installation now. So if you're just looking for Windows, that's fine. If you can probably stop the video here. But just as an intro for what I'm going to show you guys, I'm not actually going to switch to a Linux operating system. I'm actually going to do this in a virtual machine. In Windows, there's one called a WSL, for example. That means a Windows subsystem for Linux. And if you're, honestly, electrical computer or CS student, I think this is a great thing to learn. It's a very powerful tool. It's definitely not needed. If you're a CS student, you're going to have to start using, and computer engineer, you're definitely going to be using virtual machines at some point. I think this is a great way to get introduced to Linux as well. It's a very powerful system when you're doing development. So I will show you guys what this is. Basically, if you don't know what a virtual machine is, I won't try to get into too much detail of what these are. I'll link some videos and some documentation that describe these a little better for you. But for the most part, this is just a Linux environment that's working in my Windows system. So here, I'm actually going to show you my task manager. If you look over here, it shows just like I'm running Google Chrome or Spotify or Visual Studio Code. Ubuntu has its own process here inside of the inside of my terminal, inside of my Windows system. The really cool part that's unique about WSLs compared to other virtual machines is normally virtual machines are pretty contained environments. You can't, they have their own file space, so there's their own ways to save documents. You normally don't want to get outside of virtual machines. That's kind of the whole point of them for a lot of instances. So like, for example, some people that look into malware, if you want to test malware or stuff that's like infected code, you don't want to run that on your normal system. So you can run those inside of virtual machines because you're just simulating that other environment. But the really cool part about Windows Subsystem for Linux is that you can access your Windows file system inside of them, which basically all this is doing for you then is you can run Windows, run all the applications you like, and still have Linux command line usage here. So I'm going to show you how to install GCC in Linux. This will be the same commands if you're running Linux natively as well, but this is just how to do it here inside of a WSL. So I'm going to make sure I have this pulled up on the side for me so I don't miss anything. And so, originally I mentioned that I had to open Visual Studio Code in a weird way. It's because you can still call Visual Studio Code from your WSLs, which is very nice. And that's actually what I have synced up to mine. So let me open mine. Let's see, is it going to default to it? Okay, no, it actually didn't. That's fine. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, you're going to make sure, by the way, that you're on a system you have sudo access to. We're going to have to use that. So open up your terminal in Linux, or if you're in a WSL, whatever it would be. We're going to do sudo apt get. This is on Ubuntu, by the way. If you're using a different tool, just do your normal installation methods. Install G++. So I already have mine installed. Mine's on the latest version, but yours should come into here. You'll get a little bit, let me show you. You're going to get basically something asking for you if you want to continue the operation. If you've used Linux before, I'm going to guess you've installed packages, so it's very similar to that. It's going to install a couple of things, but you're just installing your G++, and then we're going to do the same exact version we did before, where we do G++ -- version. And now you see here, they're telling us that it's working, and that's it. G++ is now installed for us. So I'm not going to do an intro here into explaining how Linux works for you, but what I will do for you is show you in WSLs how to navigate to your Windows partition. Let me close out of this for you, and I'll open this up again, and then I'll show you some cool things. Okay. So right now, when you first open your WSL, it's going to put you in your Linux file system. So to get out of that, you're going to change directory back to, and this takes you to, you see a bunch of options here, but you're going to want to enter your mount. Your mount is where you can call different partitions or different hard drives. So for example, now this C and E drive are two things that are currently available on my Windows system. Let me open up this PC. So there's my C and E drive. These are both partitioned to work on Windows, but they are available for me here in this WSL. So let me remember how to get everywhere. Don't normally go this way. Documents, coding, lab. Okay. If you don't know about tab complete, it's the same thing I was mentioning before. That's going to be your best friend in this world, but clear my screen. Okay, so now I am in that folder we were initially in, and now this is a really cool feature of WSLs, is that normally you would assume this is everything you have to do here is command line oriented. So, like for example, you'd probably want to use Vim or Nano as your text editors if you would like, but if you don't want to use those, which sometimes I like using them, sometimes I don't, which I think Vim's definitely a very good source, but I like to have still a pretty nice looking IDE with me. So you can actually call Visual Studio Code by typing code dot, means the current folder, and it opens your current folder in Visual Studio Code on your Windows side. And the nice thing now is you actually have your Ubuntu terminal down here at the bottom for you. So if you would like, you can run your commands in here just like you would in here. So let me show you. GCC test.cpp-o test. Oh, I didn't like. Oh, I'm sorry. It should be G++. My bad. Oh. All right. So yeah, run this command g++ test.cpp. Oh, name it as a test. We're going to do /test.exe. So mine, I don't have any fancy texture. It's just asking for a number and then it prints it. So there's that. You can see that one's working. If you want to do it in here, you still can. G++ test.cpp-o test/test.exe. Yep. So hopefully that's helpful for you guys. I'm going to guess if you're using a Linux system, you have a little bit of an idea. If not, if you're interested in using them for the first time, I highly recommend trying to work with the WSL. They're very, very powerful, really cool tools that have been added to Windows recently. I'll link a couple tutorials at the bottom of how to get them set up. It's give yourself about an hour, I'd say, to get that set up. Don't try to set up a WSL to do your lab an hour before it's due. Give yourself a little time to mess around with it. The commands are different than anything you've done before, but this is a very powerful tool. It's going to be similar to software development you do in the future. Not everything you shouldn't really rely on run buttons for future things. So this is a really easy way to get started with it, in my opinion, at least, and it shows you kind of the power. You saw how simple it was for us to install G++. We ran one command and it was done for us. We didn't have to add path variables or anything like that, and we still get to use pretty good software here. So hopefully that helps. Please feel free to reach out to me if you guys have any questions on stuff. We'll probably upload this to YouTube to make it easier, and then I'll have my contact information in the announcement. But if you need to reach out for me for any other questions, but your TAs and professors should be able to help you with this if not. But yeah, again, let us know if you run anything else. So thanks.